All right, everyone, we have made it to Friday and we're just ahead of another weekend of Celtic action. Partick Thistle on Sunday. We're going to discuss that today. Got a number of your comments you've been sending in, as well as a few other wee stories we can discuss. A big thanks to Practical CBT for sponsoring today's show and every show. They are big on making a difference to your mental health. They've got 10-minute online workouts and coaching sessions that can make a real difference, and they really will make a difference to your mental health, which is all what we all want. Celtic AM listeners can get up to 33% off too. So they've been big supporters of the channel, everyone. So please support them, get involved. The link is in the description and you can see for yourself. Right, okay, not just me on today. We've got Scott on, Paul on as well. We've just spent the last 10 minutes discussing sport. It's not, well, football we've been discussing, but it's not the football that people here would know. Big time here with the AFL. Are we going to discuss that, or are we going to do Celtic? What do you think, Scott?
I think I'd rather Celtic because it's less stressful.
Celtic is less stressful.
Celtic is less stressful. As a Collingwood supporter, this time is nerve-wracking, and having Brisbane, Hawthorn and Geelong is all sorts of nightmares for Collingwood supporters. So there's no good outcome here, unless we win, of course. But yeah, I'd rather talk about Celtic.
And Paul, my team are playing your team tonight in a big one, so
Yeah.
we'll be nice and friendly as well. How have you been, Paul? What's been happening? How are you feeling about Celtic?
Yeah, I've been well. Yeah, I'm taking some time away from work just now. I finished my job about a week and a half ago, and I'll start another job in a few weeks. So life's been good. I've been well, and do you know what? I actually enjoy some time away. I know it's been a stressful and kind of fractious time, all things Celtic, but I just took a couple of weeks away from everything over the international break there. Didn't listen to much, didn't read much, didn't watch much, and I've actually enjoyed it, and I actually really enjoyed sitting and watching the game last weekend there and coming back fresh to it. And so, no, I'm good. I'm looking forward to the game tomorrow, and I'm possibly more positive than people that have been a bit more heads down in it, which is helpful, I think.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about, because you messaged me earlier in the week, and I think that there's obviously been a lot of kind of frustration watching Celtic, and more so the stuff off the pitch as well. But you saw stuff to be excited about on Sunday at Rugby Park.
Yeah, I did. I think that we've lost players, obviously, and rewatching games like the Bayern Munich game over the last couple of weeks, you see the impact that Nicholas Kuhn had when he was on his game. He was an outstanding footballer. Kyogo's been huge for us over the last few years. Matt O'Reilly, even having lost him, has been a big loss, and Jota been out injured. So there's been a massive amount of attacking threat taken away from Celtic, but I just saw some real green shoots. I thought Tenekte was outstanding. I thought he was really, really good, and as much as that, watching your podcast the other day, just his general demeanour, there's an excitement about the guy as he's talking, and he's just really happy to be here in a breath of fresh air, I think. And I feel that sort of thing breathes a bit of life into players that have been there for a while. I see an opportunity for us to kind of start putting some building blocks together on the foundations of a really solid season. You know, let's not forget we've got a great record so far in the league this season, albeit things off the pitch haven't been what people want them to be. But I think there are signs that the football can start progressing now. To some extent, maybe it's a blessing that we're not in the Champions League, because I think we'd be ill-equipped for that. But Europa League, I think, probably is a level where we can compete this year. So yeah, I do. I think there's lots to be positive about, trying to look glass half full, and yeah, I'm looking forward to the next few months with Celtic.
Yeah, not got a problem with you looking glass half full. I know a lot of people watching won't have a problem with that either. Yeah, we're kind of having to reevaluate our kind of expectations, maybe, that start of the season, Scott. We're looking at this team who, yeah, they were struggling at the end of last season, but they ran Bayern Munich so close. Can we get into the Champions League? We expected to get into the Champions League and to, kick on again in that competition. Clearly that hasn't happened. We've lost a few key players. There's just been all this kind of, to be honest, a bit of a horror month, guys, if you look at it. It was a horrible month. Loads of things went wrong. It was a disaster. But maybe, as much as the performance wasn't great on Sunday, maybe there are a few wee things you can look at, and you know, as Paul says, maybe we can just kind of reset now and start to build gradually.
Yeah, I think the international break actually came at a really good time for the squad. There weren't as many guys away. You had your incomings have a chance to get to know the place and get to know the city. So I think that's of benefit. You got Turek, he seems like a really positive and energetic guy around. If you look at sort of even just the Lennoxtown footage, like it seemed a little bit laborious at times and only the odd sort of joke here or there. If you look at it this week, there's a lot of smiling faces, and Ian Ucho's another one. He seems to have brought a real positiveness. I mean, I've heard he's had a lot of criticism, but I sort of see him maybe going through a bit in his career, kind of like how we got Jota back. Things didn't turn out in Saudi, went to France, comes back to Celtic where he's loved, and you get a happy footballer again. Maybe that's what Ian Ucho needs in his career, and hopefully that'll bear fruit. If his positive sort of outlook on being at Celtic comes to fruition and turns into good football. So I think it also gave a bit of relief for McGregor to just, he had 2 weeks where he could just not carry anything, not have to answer any questions. Brendan Rodgers as well. He can get around and have chats to all the new guys coming in and whatnot, and leave all that business side behind, because we don't have to worry about that for now. And he can just prepare his team. So I'm looking forward to what we produce. It's going to be a bit bumpy in parts, but I think we're going to be all right.
What have you guys made of the kind of off the field stuff that's been going on? Clearly, you know, a lot of unhappiness. I think the last time we spoke was after the Kairat tie, and we were obviously pretty unhappy after that. But a lot has happened since then. We won't revisit the club statement and all of that kind of stuff. But various protests. Well, at the Killie game, there's been talk of, I think, protests potentially happening this weekend as well, though we've not got details of that yet. What do you make of kind of the balance we're having to do, Scott, between like, you know, showing that we're unhappy but also supporting the team? Is that an easy thing to do?
It's not an easy thing to do, and you're gonna and have copped a lot of criticism from like established media types, and I see a Lord had to venture in because he'd know the frustrations of the fans, I'm sure. I think the fan side of things, they've handled it really well. They're keeping everyone informed. Big tick. Who knew that could work wonders when you're trying to organise something? I think the way the fans conducted themselves on Saturday, by and large, looked really good. Of course, not everyone is a participant in the walk-in at 12 minutes, but there doesn't seem to be a lot from those who did participate that aiming it back at the fans, because what we don't need is a split. And yeah, so I think so long as there's a clear delineation between what we expect from front office and that's separate to what we expect from the team, I think that'll be fine. I think people understand, or fans understand what it's all about. And I think that's really important. So the two are different, and we do need to back the team. Absolutely. That's non-negotiable.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, the biggest issue is communication just now. So there could well be good reasons why we didn't get players in when we wanted to over the summer. There could be reasons why it was late and it was kind of last minute. We just need to know that. And I think that's my biggest challenge over this whole period is the lack of transparency and communication between the people running the club and the supporters of the club, who really are the lifeblood, who put their money into the club and are what enables us to kind of keep going and kick on. So I would love to see that communication better. And I think what I'd like to see as a group of supporters, if you like, is us finding good ways to make that clear to the board and approaching the board in, I think, respectful and humble ways to try and get them to understand that it's difficult to continue putting your money in when you don't feel that you're hearing a lot, and when you're then forced to rush to judgment on certain things. So I don't know whether the club can do better in engaging with groups of fans and having maybe even more formal structures where they communicate with fans groups and communicate with the fans in general, because really we're all together in trying to make Celtic a sustainable, a better, a long-term club for the future, if you like. That's something that we're all looking to do together in our various different ways, and I think in communicating how we go about that, there are better ways to do that, because at the moment there's just so much suspicion, I think, and so much assumption and thoughts around people's motives for doing things without having any clear communication around it. So I think that the club could do better in that regard. I think I liked your suggestion the other day that things like boycotting merchandise don't impact the park the team on the pitch, on the park. And I think the more that we can look to do to find ways where we can make it clear to the board that we need to find better ways of communicating with one another and working together without impacting the team that are going out there trying to play for the jersey every week and trying to do a good job would be good. So, yeah, I'd like to see the communication better, and I'd like to see us as fan groups finding good ways to push that through.
Yeah, good stuff, guys. Appreciate that. I wanted to, I know we probably spent a little bit too long in that, but I thought it was good to get your thoughts on that. Do have a number of questions that have been sent in. Don't know if we'll get through them all, everyone. And I've also not briefed either of you two with these, so no pressure. Dermot McCullough got in touch. 2 discussion points. If Iheanacho starts, then where does Daizen fit in? And why is Engels not starting before Nygren or Hatate? So Scott, do you want to take the first one? If Iheanacho starts, which I think is the way things are going to head, what happens with that front three? Where do you fit Daizen in? Because Tenekte looks like he's got that left wing position nailed down. Is it Daizen on the right? He did play there a bit under Ange. I don't think it's quite as unfamiliar as people would think. I remember Jota used to play on the left and Daizen on the right, and they would switch. So he can do it, but it doesn't seem a perfect scenario.
Yeah, I think Brendan's going to have to be creative. I was trying to figure out my team for the weekend, what I think we're likely to see, and I had Iheanacho starting. I think that's going to be important because he's the guy that's going to be there for the year. Daizen's going to be away at some point, so we need to get some minutes into the guy that we think is going to be around a bit longer, and that's only going to benefit the team. But that's not to diminish what Daizen does. Daizen could come on after 60 minutes, for example, on the weekend. But also, we've got European football, so we need to start using the squad more and not relying on the same guys to put in 70, 80, 90 minutes twice a week. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Maeda start midweek in the striker position and have Iheanacho start against Thistle on the weekend. And I think that's kind of going to be the rotation. One will get 60, one will get 30, and then the following game it'll switch around. If Tenekte has to come off for some reason, then Maeda would switch back out and you'd put Iheanacho up the top anyway. So I think, with just Yang and Forrest on the right, I think Maeda could play a little bit more time there because it's clear that Nygren can't really play that position, neither can Balikwisha. So
yeah, he looked uncomfortable out there, didn't he?
Yeah, and they're learning those positions on the fly. I think Daizen is more up to it. He's more familiar with the guys around him. So I think that's probably, at least for until the January window, I think that's something we could see.
It's an interesting point you make about, Daizen, potentially leaving, because you think Daizen probably will leave in January, given how close he was to leaving there. So, do you prioritise someone who's going to be here longer? But it's difficult because Daizen was a player of the season last year. It's a bit of a mess. Any thoughts on that, Paul? Or if not, you can tackle the second part, the Engels, Nygren, Hatate debate.
Yeah, I think just a brief thought on Daizen. He played so much football last year. He for whatever reason, whether it's head being turned or whatever it was, the start of the season hasn't been maybe what we expected. I really enjoyed seeing him touching the badge after he scored last weekend. I think for no other reason than he's shown a bit of kind of personal professionalism. That whether or not he wants to be elsewhere, for me, the message that he was given when he touched his badge was he's here to do the job for the team that's paying him. It didn't work out, but I think to make sort of character suggestions that around someone down in tools because he didn't get what they want, I just don't think that's in his nature, and I think that's the point he was making. So I think wherever he gets put, he'll play to 100%. I think he'll probably rotate out and get rested a little bit more over the next half, the first half of this season, if you like, and that'll be good to see because there are options up there now. I think moving on to the midfield, Negrin's possibly been overused, I think, and I agree that as much as Engels has suffered under the price tag, I think he had a fine year last year. He potentially, in some Celtic fans' eyes, didn't have an £11 million player year. But I think the way to get over that is to play more football and to come in and play and to play well when you play. So I'd like to see him playing more. I'd like to see, and I think now that European football's here, the first few games of the season we've been playing once a week. He's going to get a lot of football, I think, over the next 3 months because there's going to be 2 games a week. The same can be said for Bernardo. I'm really hopeful that Bernardo will play at the weekend. I think he's a great footballer, and I'm baffled as to why he hasn't had any football really at the start of the season. So I hope he'll play a bit more. I think Hatate could benefit from a rest here and there. I think the same could be said for Negrin. So we'll see more rotation. I hope Callum McGregor gets rested here and there over the next few months as well, because at the age that he's getting to and the amount of football that gets put in his legs every year, I also think looking to the future, we need to be looking at how we transition someone else into that role. I don't know whether that's someone that's in the squad just now that's earmarked for that, or whether we'll bring in someone else in. But I do think we look a different proposition when Callum's not on the side. There's a different balance around the midfield, and it actually works pretty well.
I was just wondering if, someone like Sean McArdle, we could potentially see more of him. I don't think he went out on loan, did he? I think he's been playing with the B team, so it'd be nice, because I heard things at the start of the season, like Brendan Rodgers was maybe looking at McArdle playing a bit of, a fair few matches, but it's not really happened. But that midfield, badly needs something kind of to change in there. And we talk about the attack, and the attack looked incredibly stale. I think immediately when you put Tinecti in one player, everything just, went up a gear at the weekend. It wasn't perfect, but it made such a difference. You just think if you get someone in that midfield who can do that. Obviously, we don't have any new signings. I'll make the point again, Balikwisha has played centrally for Antwerp. I don't think the manager will put him in one of those 2 positions. So is it someone like Engels coming in, revitalised, or Bernardo, or even Luke McCowan? I just think that midfield's looked really poor in recent matches. Matthew Rossi asking, what about starting the season a couple of weeks earlier? That way we would be fitter and more prepared for the Champions League qualifiers, with the added benefit of knowing more about what we need to address in the squad before the transfer window shuts. We often get dumped out by teams who are already well into their domestic seasons, i.e. Kairat, and it seems to have benefited the Irish teams in Europe. I think we might be starting a season earlier by default, not next year but the year after. I think a lot of qualifiers are coming in, guys, which is a scary thought. Bandage asking about the League Cup moving to weekends the whole way through. Remember, it used to be the midweek matches, I think up until the final potentially, and now it's weekends. I'm not sure the actual reason for that. I think it's probably to give it kind of a better opportunity to flourish, have the weekend matches, bigger crowds, that kind of thing. I don't feel too strongly about it either way. Tam Rogic Memorial saying, given the squad we've currently got, do you think Brendan should change the system to get the best out of them? For example, Bally at 10, Calmack at 8, perhaps even KT as part of a back 3. We can kind of merge this with our potentially talking about the team we would field on Sunday at Firhill. I mean, is there any obvious changes here Brendan Rodgers can make? You look at, different formations. Is there like a 3-5-2. I actually remember Neil Lennon going to 3-5-2 a number of years ago, and I think Firhill in the Cup might have been one of the first games when he did it, when we had Griffiths and Edward, and it kind of revitalised the team at that point. I just don't think Brendan Rodgers is likely to do that. But I wonder, do you go back to like a 4-2-3-1 that he had in his first spell at the club? Any thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah, I think for me the challenges we have are the difference between playing against a low block versus playing against a team that's open and expansive. And so if you think that there's opportunity to potentially play a target man with a smaller striker alongside him if you play two up top, then maybe that necessitates a move either to a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2. And we definitely get the players to do that. And Daizen running off, I don't know if Ian Atchell can play as a number 9. I've not watched enough of him to know whether he can be a target man or whether even that be a Johnny Kenny or something like that. But so there's opportunity to do it, and I think pragmatically, if Brendan Rodgers is looking at a game and thinking we're going to be up against it here to pick our way through this side, then maybe that's something that he'd look to do. It probably happens more during a game, though. It probably happens more if we're struggling with 20, 30 minutes to go, and they would make that switch to try and do that. So I'm not sure he's going to start 3-5-2 in any game, but we certainly have the tools to do it, don't we?
What about this weekend then, Scott? Did you say you had some sort of a team jotted down?
I was trying to think of the team that we're likely to see, but also mindful that Brendan doesn't like to change too much. But I think he will for this game.
Yeah.
Because he needs to get some touch into some guys, particularly in the midfield. I actually think we see Engels and Bernardo start because they have to, because they've had no football really this year. So they need to get some touch. I think Bernardo is the sort of guy that we kind of need a bit too, because he plays a bit more direct. He's strong on the ball. One of my frustrations this year is that Hatati's looked a little bit flat and he's getting bumped off the ball a fair bit. I think Thistle will be a physical team. And I think Bernardo, he needs the game time. He's a strong lad. Like, let him have some time. I don't understand. He was a really, really good player until he got that ankle injury. And, you know, you come back from ankles, they can be tricky things to get a lot of confidence back in. I don't understand how he can't get minutes in a midfield that's not working how we expected it to. So if he's not going to get a decent amount of minutes in a game like this, I don't know what it'll take, like a mass injury crisis or something maybe. But if I go from the back, I think we'll see Sinisalo in goal. And that's something that everyone's well talked about, gives Sinisalo all the cup games. Colby Donovan is a walk-up start for me. I thought he was really good for a first up start. I think this will be a game that'll test him too, because they like to press high. Whether or not they do that to Celtic, I'm not sure, but they certainly did that last weekend. Centre of defence had me a bit confounded. I think we might see CCV and Scales in there.
Dane Murray?
I would love to see Dane Murray. I'm just not sure whether Brendan would be... That would be my pick, but I'm not sure if Brendan will be confident to have two young players next to each other with a team like Partick in a cut game where it's a bit more cutthroat. Maybe we'll see Dane Murray come on later, but I would love to see him to start for sure. And then I'd have Srirachi on the other side too, because I think he could benefit from more minutes, keep KT fresher for midweek, maybe give him 20 or 30 at the end. I would start with McCowan, Engels and Bernardo in the midfield. And then probably Yang.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry, but there's no dislike of Yang here. It's just every time someone says Yang, I actually forget that he didn't leave us and he's actually still a viable option.
Tough spot for him to be in, but he's here great. And we should use him, because we can't have an aging Forest having to play 60, 70, 80 every single week because one guy, for whatever reasons, the deal didn't get done properly, and that's not his fault. That's a club problem. And I'd probably start with Tanetki on the other wing, just because I think a fast start is going to be really important here. If Thistle can turn it into a bit of a grind, then it gets nervy. So I think Tanetki could be that spark that gets everything going. And you could replace him, depending on the scoreline, replace him at halftime or after 60 minutes, and we can manage the game out from there. And then Ian Ucho up front. He needs a good bank of minutes, and what better way to start against, with respect, a championship side, to get him moving, get him to work with teammates under pressure, with a team that will, try and push you around and give you something to think about. So that's the team I would like to see on the weekend. But Brendan will probably start with the starting 11 from last weekend.
I don't think you're a million miles away from what we'll see, to be honest. I think when you look back at the last round of the Cup against Falkirk, he made a lot of those changes. I think he changed, it might have been the Livingston game actually, but there was one game when he changed the entire midfield, and it was Bernardo, Engels and McCowan. I'm pretty sure it was the Livingston game in the league ahead of our trip to Kazakhstan, and they weren't great in that first half. But I'd like to see it again.
I think that first half, everyone's really critical of that first half, but those guys haven't played any under pressure football together. So things can be a little bit, they can miss the timing on a pass or whatever, but the endeavour was there. And there are a couple of sizzling, I think Dane Murray had a couple of sizzling passes that broke the line. Could you imagine that unleashing Tanetki, bypassing the midfield completely because he's got that skiving pass that goes through and lands at his feet? He's got that. Him and Colby Donovan have that in the kit bag. I think that's what excites me about those two boys. And I think I'd be more than happy to have Dane Murray start instead of CCV as well. So, we're going to have to use these guys throughout the European campaign. So they got to get some time in somewhere, and I think this is the perfect opportunity.
Belgrade potentially on the manager's mind as well, Paul, which kind of adds an extra layer of difficulty, I guess.
Yeah, I think so, and you'll have one eye on that. That's why I think Sirachi will start, for example. I think Kieran Tierney will start against Belgrade, but I think Sirachi will keep his place here. I would play Dane Murray for sure, because I think the only question is whether the manager feels that CCV needs minutes, needs to continue playing himself into form, or come back from some time out or whatever it is. So, but Dane Murray would be a certain starter for me for sure. And I think Colby Donovan possibly is the only option at right back at the moment. I don't know if Ralston's back yet, is he? So
don't think so.
Donovan
he's in a
play. Yeah, there you go. So, but I would play Balikwisha. I think I'd be, and maybe if Tanekta needs 30 minutes at the end, if they've got to bring him on and things aren't going the way they would have them, I would start Balikwisha, because I think it'd be good to give him minutes on the left again, and I'd probably play Jamesy on the right. He's not played much football recently, certainly since the Kairak games. He's had the 2 weeks off the international break, and I would play that same midfield that you're talking about, the Engels, Bernardo and McCowan. I think they're a more dynamic midfield, if that makes sense. I think there's a bit more energy and movement in there, and movement's just been sadly lacking. I think that's for me been the challenge with the midfield, and again, the manager sees them in training and he sees a lot more about what's going on, but that's been part of the challenge why the ball's going into the midfield and coming straight back, is because there hasn't been movement for a Dane Murray pass through the lines. That there hasn't been that amount heading up, and Scales gets a lot of criticism for his movement of the ball forward, but he's only as good as the movement of the players ahead of him. So if they're not moving for him to play the ball to, then it's going to look as if he's poor on the ball. But the reality, I think, is it's been a bit static. So yeah, that's a long way of saying I agree with you, Scott. Other than I would play Balikwisha, and I agree to have Murray in there, and Ian Ashall for sure up front. You need some minutes.
Yeah, it'd just be amazing if the team could just kind of kick on now and get us feeling good, and put in a really good display. And it'd be amazing if Balikwisha started performing well. I know there's a lot of doubt about him, and he's been not even extremely poor so far. He's just been extremely quiet so far, which is almost worse than poor, because you're not even seeing anything from him. But just if he could just settle himself down a bit and start showing us, because he's clearly got some sort of quality for, you know, being at Antwerp for so long and doing well. But if we can just get a good performance and a big win to kick us on into next week, that would be great. Rest of the League Cup fixtures this weekend, so you get Killie v St Mirren Friday night, Saturday double header, Aberdeen versus Motherwell, Rangers versus Hibernian, which will be interesting, and then of course our game on Sunday. So a big weekend. We'll see how it goes. I think Celtic will be okay. Famous last words maybe, but we should hopefully be good enough to get past Thistle. And we won't mention the AFL, guys. We'll leave that there. I appreciate you both coming on, and we'll catch up with you both soon. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thanks, Hamish. See ya.
Cheers, everyone, for watching. Really appreciate it. And no video tomorrow. I'm actually away this weekend, but I'll be back first thing on Monday looking back in the game. Chat to you then.